The champagne glass slipped from Elena Kimball's hand, shattering against the marble floor of the ballroom as she locked eyes with the man she had spent 5 years trying to forget. She stood frozen among the wedding guests, her burgundy bridesmaid dress suddenly feeling too tight, too warm. Ethan Drake stood across the room in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, looking every bit the successful man she had heard he had become. His dark hair was shorter now, more refined, but those gray eyes were exactly as she remembered them. The same eyes that had looked at her with such tenderness the night before everything fell apart. "Elena, are you okay?" Her friend Sophie, the bride, appeared at her elbow, concern creasing her forehead. "I'm fine, just clumsy." Elena forced a smile, crouching to gather the larger pieces of broken glass. A server rushed over with a dustpan, and Elena gratefully stepped aside, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Did you see someone you know?" Sophie asked, following her gaze. "Just thought I recognized someone." "It's nothing." But it was everything. Ethan Drake had been her world once, back when they were both 23 and finishing their graduate programs. They had dated for 2 intense, passionate years before life pulled them in different directions. She had received a fellowship to study sustainable architecture in Amsterdam, and he had been offered a position at his father's manufacturing company in Chicago. They had tried long distance for 3 months before the distance became too much, before the missed calls and time differences eroded what they had built together. The breakup had been mutual, mature, and absolutely devastating. Now here he was at Sophie's wedding, and Elena had no idea how to process the flood of emotions coursing through her. "Elena, there you are." Sophie's new husband, Marcus, appeared with Ethan beside him. Elena's stomach dropped. "I want you to meet my college roommate, Ethan Drake." "Ethan, this is Sophie's best friend from architecture school, Elena Kimball." Ethan extended his hand, his expression carefully neutral. "It's nice to meet you." She took his hand, feeling the familiar warmth of his touch. "Likewise." Marcus continued, oblivious to the tension. "Ethan just flew in from Chicago. He runs Drake Industries now. Can you believe this guy turned his father's small manufacturing company into a sustainable energy powerhouse? He's a genuine CEO millionaire, and he still makes time for old friends." "That's impressive," Elena managed, withdrawing her hand. "And Elena is the youngest partner at Green and Associates," Sophie added proudly. "She designs eco-friendly buildings all over Europe. She just moved back to New York last month." "That's wonderful," Ethan said, and she could hear something beneath the polite words, something that made her chest ache. The band started playing and Marcus grabbed Sophie's hand. "Come on, Mrs. Henderson, they're playing our song." As they walked away, Elena and Ethan stood in awkward silence. The ballroom bustled around them with laughter and music and clinking glasses, but Elena felt like they existed in a bubble, separate from everything else. "You look beautiful," Ethan said finally. "You look good, too." She tucked a strand of her auburn hair behind her ear, a nervous habit he probably still remembered. "I didn't know you'd be here. Marcus and I reconnected a few years ago at a business conference. I didn't know you would be here either." He paused. "I heard you were still in Europe." "I was. But my firm opened a New York office and they asked me to lead it." She glanced around the room, looking for an escape route. "I should probably check on the other bridesmaids." "Elena, wait." His hand caught her wrist gently. "Can we talk? Not here, but maybe later." She looked at his hand on her wrist, then up at his face. Those 5 years seemed to melt away, and she was 25 again, crying in her Amsterdam apartment as she told him they needed to end things. She pulled her wrist free. "I don't think that's a good idea. Please." Just for a few minutes. Before she could answer, one of the groomsmen called Ethan over for photographs. He gave her an apologetic look and walked away, leaving Elena standing alone with her heart racing and her mind spinning. She made it through the rest of the reception on autopilot, smiling for photos, giving her maid of honor speech, dancing with Marcus's father during the parent dance. But she was hyper-aware of Ethan's presence, could feel his eyes on her from across the room. When their gazes met during dinner, she looked away quickly, focusing on her chicken piccata as if it were the most fascinating thing she had ever seen. After the cake cutting, Elena escaped to the hotel terrace. The October air was cool against her skin, and she wrapped her arms around herself, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. The city glittered with lights, beautiful and overwhelming. You always did like finding quiet spaces at parties. She turned to find Ethan standing in the doorway, his jacket draped over his arm, his tie loosened. He looked tired and handsome and so achingly familiar that she had to look away. "What do you want, Ethan?" He walked over to stand beside her at the railing, maintaining a respectful distance. "I just want to talk. It's been 5 years. Exactly. It's been 5 years. We've both moved on." "Have we?" She turned to face him, her emotions finally bubbling over. "What kind of question is that? You can't just show up after 5 years and expect things to be the same." "I don't expect that, but I also don't expect to feel like someone punched me in the chest when I saw you tonight." His voice was raw, honest. "I thought I was over you, Elena. I really did. But then I saw you standing there and it all came back." She closed her eyes, trying to steady herself. "We ended things for good reasons. Did we? Or were we just too young and too scared to fight for what we had? You were building your career in Chicago. I was in Amsterdam. What were we supposed to do? I don't know. But I know that breaking up with you was the biggest mistake I ever made." He turned to face her fully. "I dated other people. None of them were you. None of them made me laugh the way you did. None of them understood me the way you did. Ethan, please don't do this. I'm not trying to make things difficult. I just need you to know that I never stopped caring about you." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she remembered from 1,000 different moments. "Can we at least try to be friends? Marcus and Sophie are married now. We're going to see each other at events." She wanted to say no, wanted to protect her heart from the inevitable hurt. But standing here with him, seeing the vulnerability in his eyes, she found herself nodding. "Friends. Okay, thank you." He smiled and her heart stuttered. "Can I get you a drink?" As friends, they went back inside and Ethan returned with 2 glasses of wine. They found a quiet table in the corner and talked carefully at first, sticking to safe topics. He told her about taking over Drake Industries, about the challenges of transforming a traditional manufacturing company into a leader in sustainable energy. She told him about her work in Amsterdam, about the projects she had designed, the places she had seen. As the night wore on, their conversation became easier, more natural. They laughed about Marcus's terrible dancing and Sophie's emotional toast. They reminisced about their graduate school days, about the terrible apartment they had shared with 4 other people, about the time they had gotten locked out on the roof during a party. "Remember when we drove to that beach in Rhode Island?" Elena asked, the wine making her nostalgic. "It was freezing and we were the only people there. You made me swim anyway," Ethan said, shaking his head. "I thought I was going to get hypothermia, but you did it because I asked. I would have done anything you asked." His tone shifted, becoming more serious. "I still would." The moment hung between them, charged and delicate. Elena set down her wine glass. "I should go. It's late. Let me walk you to your room. Ethan, as a friend, just to make sure you get there safely." They walked through the hotel in silence, the hallways quiet and dimly lit. When they reached her door, Elena fumbled for her key card. "Thank you for talking to me tonight," Ethan said. "I know it wasn't easy. It wasn't as hard as I expected," she admitted, "but that scares me." "Why?" Because I worked really hard to get over you. And one night shouldn't undo all of that. He reached out and tucked that same strand of hair behind her ear, his touch gentle. What if some things are worth undoing? She stepped back, putting distance between them. Good night, Ethan. She slipped into her room and closed the door, leaning against it as she heard his footsteps fade down the hallway. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. I saw you talking to Ethan. You okay? Elena typed back. Define okay. Want to meet for breakfast tomorrow before I leave for my honeymoon? Yes, please. Elena changed into her pajamas and washed her face, but sleep was impossible. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the evening. Seeing Ethan again had stirred up everything she had tried to bury. The love, the hurt, the what-ifs that had haunted her for years. She picked up her phone and scrolled through her photos, finding the folder she had never been able to delete. Pictures of them together, young and in love. Ethan with his arm around her shoulders at graduation. Elena laughing at something he had said. The two of them bundled up on that freezing Rhode Island beach, their noses red from the cold. She closed the folder and put the phone away. This was ridiculous. They were different people now, with different lives in different cities. One night of nostalgia did not erase 5 years of separation. But as she finally drifted off to sleep, her last thought was of Ethan's hand on her wrist, and the way her heart had jumped at his touch. The next morning, Elena met Sophie at the hotel restaurant. Her friend looked radiant despite the late night, her face glowing with newlywed happiness. So, Sophie said, ordering them both coffee. Ethan Drake. I don't want to talk about it. Too bad, you're talking about it. Sophie leaned forward. I had no idea you two knew each other. Marcus said Ethan got really quiet when he saw you. We dated in graduate school. It ended when I moved to Amsterdam. And now you're both single and both living in New York. He lives in Chicago. Actually, he's opening a New York office for Drake Industries. Marcus told me last night Ethan's moving here next month. Elena's coffee cup stopped halfway to her mouth. What? I know, right? What are the odds? Sophie's eyes sparkled with mischief. It's like fate. It's like terrible timing, Elena corrected. Sophie, we broke up for a reason. Because you were on different continents, that's not an issue anymore. 5 years have passed. We're different people. Are you? Because from where I was standing, you two looked at each other the same way you used to. Like the rest of the world didn't exist. Elena shook her head. I can't go through that again. The breakup nearly destroyed me. I spent months trying to function normally while feeling like half of me was missing. Sophie reached across the table and squeezed her hand. I know it was hard, but I also know that what you two had was special. Marcus says Ethan has never settled down with anyone, never even gotten close to serious. Maybe that means something. Or maybe it means we both have commitment issues. Elena, I'm not saying you should run off and marry the guy, but would it really be so terrible to see where things go? You're both here. You're both available. Life doesn't give you second chances very often. After Sophie left for her honeymoon, Elena returned to her apartment in Brooklyn. Her place was still full of boxes, the chaos of her recent move evident in every room. She spent the day unpacking, trying to lose herself in the physical task, but her mind kept drifting back to Ethan. Her phone buzzed with an unknown number. Hi, Elena, it's Ethan. I got your number from Marcus, hope that's okay. Would you like to get coffee this week, as friends? She stared at the message for a long time. The smart thing would be to decline to maintain her distance. But Sophie's words echoed in her mind. Life doesn't give you second chances very often. Coffee sounds good, she typed back. Thursday at 2. They met at a small cafe in the West Village, the kind of place with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. Ethan arrived first, and when Elena walked in, he stood up, that same gesture of old-fashioned courtesy she remembered. "Thanks for coming," he said as she sat down. "Thanks for asking." She ordered a cappuccino and they fell into an awkward silence. "This is weird, isn't it?" Ethan finally said. "Very weird. We used to talk for hours without running out of things to say." "That was before," Elena said softly, "before we broke each other's hearts." She looked at him, surprised by his directness. "Yes." He leaned back in his chair. "I've been thinking about what you said at the wedding, about how we ended things for good reasons, but I've also been thinking about all the reasons we were together in the first place." "Ethan, just hear me out." He leaned forward, his gray eyes intense. "We were good together, Elena. Really good. We made each other better. You pushed me to think bigger, to care about more than just success. I made you slow down, enjoy the moment instead of always planning for the future. We also hurt each other. We did. But we were kids, essentially. We didn't know how to fight for a relationship across distance. We gave up too easily." "You think it was easy?" Her voice rose slightly. "Ethan, ending things with you was the hardest thing I ever did." "But I was building my career. You were building yours. Neither of us could compromise without resenting the other." "You're right. But things are different now. I'm more established. So are you. We have more control over our lives, more flexibility. You live in Chicago. I'm moving to New York." He said it simply, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Drake Industries is expanding, and I'm personally overseeing the East Coast operations. I'll be here by mid-November." Elena felt her carefully constructed defenses beginning to crack. "That doesn't change the past." "No, but it could change the future." He reached across the table, stopping just short of taking her hand. "I'm not asking you to jump back into a relationship. I'm asking for a chance to get to know you again, to see if what we had is still there." She looked at his hand, so close to hers. Part of her wanted to grab it, to close the distance and let herself hope. But the other part remembered the pain, the months of tears and sleepless nights. "I need time to think about this." "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." They finished their coffee, and the conversation shifted to safer ground. He told her about his company, about the solar panel technology they were developing. She told him about her current project, a sustainable housing complex in Queens. As they talked, Elena felt the old connection stirring, the easy rapport they had always shared. When they left the cafe, Ethan walked her to the subway station. "Can I see you again?" he asked. "Maybe. I don't know yet." "Fair enough." He smiled, and she felt that familiar flutter in her chest. "For what it's worth, I think we deserve another chance." She watched him walk away, his hands in his pockets, his stride confident and purposeful. Everything about him drew her in, just like it always had. And that was exactly the problem. Over the next few weeks, Elena tried to focus on work. Her firm had landed a major contract to design a green office building in Manhattan, and she threw herself into the project. But Ethan kept texting. Nothing pushy, just small messages about his day or a funny article he thought she would like. Against her better judgment, she found herself responding, and their text conversations grew longer and more frequent. 3 weeks after the wedding, Ethan invited her to a gallery opening in Chelsea. His company was sponsoring the event, which featured artists who worked with recycled materials. "It's a work thing," he texted, "but I thought you might enjoy it. No pressure either way." Elena stood in her apartment, holding her phone and debating. Going would send a signal that she was open to whatever was developing between them. Not going would be the safer choice. She called her sister, Margaret, who lived in Boston with her husband and 2 kids. "Go to the event," Margaret said without hesitation. "Life is too short to play it safe all the time." "That's easy for you to say. You married your high school sweetheart, and it was still scary." Love is always scary, but it's worth it. I don't know if this is love or just nostalgia, so go find out. Wear that blue dress you bought in Paris, the one that makes you look amazing. Have fun, see what happens. Elena wore the blue dress. The gallery was crowded with people in expensive clothes, drinking wine and examining sculptures made from discarded electronics. She spotted Ethan across the room, talking to a woman in a red dress. He looked up, saw Elena, and his face transformed. He excused himself and made his way through the crowd. "You came." "I like art," she said, keeping her tone light. "You look stunning. You said that already at the wedding. It's still true." He gestured around the room. "Come on, let me show you around." They walked through the gallery, and Ethan introduced her to the artists and explained the work his company was doing to support sustainable art initiatives. Elena was impressed by his passion, by how much he cared about making a real difference. The Ethan she had known in graduate school had been ambitious but uncertain, still figuring out his place in the world. This Ethan was confident, purposeful, and even more attractive because of it. "I'm proud of you," she said as they stopped in front of a sculpture made from old car parts. "You've built something really meaningful. Thank you, that means a lot coming from you." He turned to face her. "I'm proud of you too. I looked at your portfolio online. Your buildings are incredible." "You looked me up, of course I did. I wanted to see what you had accomplished." He smiled. "You're changing the way people think about urban housing. That project you did in Rotterdam won awards." She felt herself blushing. "It was a team effort. Stop being modest. You're brilliant at what you do." Someone called his name and he sighed. "I have to go schmooze with potential investors, but would you stay? I should be free in about an hour and we could grab dinner." She should say no. She should protect her heart and walk away, but instead she found herself nodding. "I'll stay." Dinner stretched into drinks, which stretched into a walk through the city. They wandered through the quieter streets of the West Village, talking about everything and nothing. The awkwardness from their first coffee had disappeared, replaced by the easy intimacy they had once shared. "Remember when we used to walk around Boston for hours?" Ethan asked. "We'd just pick a direction and go, and we always got lost, because you refused to use GPS." "I liked getting lost with you," Elena admitted. "It felt like an adventure." They stopped at a small park, sitting on a bench under the streetlights. The October air had grown colder and Elena shivered. Without a word, Ethan draped his jacket over her shoulders. "Thank you. Elena, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." Her heart started racing. "Okay, is there any part of you that wants to try again? Or am I just torturing us both by hoping for something that can't happen?" She looked at him, at the vulnerability in his face, and felt her defenses crumbling. "I'm terrified." "Of what?" "Of getting hurt again. Of falling for you and then losing you. Of giving up everything I've built to chase something that might not work." "I'm not asking you to give up anything. I'm asking if you'll let me be part of your life while you keep being amazing at your job and living your life." He took her hand, and this time she did not pull away. "I'm scared too. I'm scared of messing this up again, but I'm more scared of wondering what might have been. We live in different cities. For 3 more weeks. Then I'll be here in New York, living 10 blocks from your apartment." "How do you know where I live?" Sophie might have mentioned it. Despite everything, Elena laughed. "Our friends are conspiring against us, or for us." He squeezed her hand. "Elena, I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago. I've grown up. I've learned what matters and what doesn't." "And you matter. You've always mattered." She looked down at their joined hands. "I don't know if I can do this casually. If we start something, I'll fall completely. That's how I am. Then fall, I'll catch you, and I'll fall right alongside you." She turned to him, searching his face for any hint of doubt, but found only certainty. You promise you won't run this time. If things get hard, I promise. No more running." He raised his free hand. "And if I break that promise, you have permission to throw something heavy at me." "That seems fair." She took a deep breath. "Okay, okay, let's try, but slowly. We need to actually get to know each other again before we jump into anything serious." The smile that spread across his face was worth every ounce of fear she felt. "Slowly, I can do slowly." He walked her home, and at her building's entrance they stood in an awkward dance of should we, shouldn't we. Finally, Ethan leaned down and kissed her forehead. "Good night, Elena. Good night." She floated up to her apartment, her head spinning, her heart full. Margaret called as soon as she walked in the door. "Well, I think I'm going to try again with Ethan." Her sister squealed so loudly that Elena had to hold the phone away from her ear. "I knew it. Margaret's intuition never fails. Don't get too excited. We're taking it slow. Slow is good. Slow is smart, but Elena—" "Yeah, let yourself be happy. You deserve this." Over the next 3 weeks, Elena and Ethan fell into a pattern. He was in Chicago during the week, managing the transition of his responsibilities, but he flew to New York every weekend. They went to museums and restaurants, took the ferry to Staten Island, spent a rainy Sunday afternoon in her apartment watching old movies. They talked about the past, working through the hurt they had caused each other. Ethan apologized for not fighting harder to make the long-distance work. Elena apologized for shutting down, for making the decision to end things without really giving them a chance to find a solution together. "I was so focused on my career," she said one evening over dinner. "I thought if I didn't take that fellowship, I'd regret it forever. But I regretted losing you more. We both made mistakes, but we were young. We didn't know how to balance ambition and love. Do you think we know now? I think we have a better chance." He reached across the table and took her hand, "And I think we're worth the effort." They did not rush into physical intimacy. Their first real kiss came during Ethan's 3rd weekend in New York. They were walking across the Brooklyn Bridge at sunset, the city spread out before them in shades of gold and orange. Elena stopped to take a photo, and when she turned around, Ethan was standing close, his eyes dark with emotion. "Can I kiss you?" he asked. "Yes." He cupped her face in his hands and kissed her softly, sweetly, like they had all the time in the world. Elena felt herself melting into him, 5 years of separation dissolving in that single perfect moment. When they pulled apart, she was breathless. "I've been wanting to do that since the wedding," he admitted. "What took you so long?" you said slowly. She laughed and kissed him again, less sweetly this time, with all the pent-up longing she had been carrying. A group of tourists whistled and cheered as they passed, and Elena broke away, her face flushed. "Come on," she said, taking his hand. "Let's go home." They went to her apartment, and for the first time in 5 years, Elena allowed herself to be completely vulnerable with someone. They made love slowly, relearning each other's bodies, and afterward they lay tangled together in her bed, not wanting to let go. "I forgot how perfectly you fit against me," Ethan murmured, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. "I didn't forget anything," Elena admitted. "I tried, but I couldn't." "Good, I don't want to be forgettable. You never were." When Ethan finally moved to New York in mid-November, it felt natural for him to spend most of his time at Elena's apartment. His own place was a modern loft in Tribeca, all glass and steel, but he preferred the warmth of her space, with its plants and art and evidence of a life fully lived. "I need to hire someone to make my place actually livable," he said one morning, looking around at her colorful throw pillows and framed photographs. "It looks like a hotel room." "That's because you let the real estate agent stage it," Elena said, handing him a cup of coffee. "You need to put your personality into it. Maybe you could help me. Are you asking me to decorate your apartment? I'm asking you to make it feel like a home." They spent a weekend shopping for furniture and art, and Elena enjoyed seeing Ethan's taste emerge. He liked clean lines but warm woods, minimal decoration but meaningful pieces. They found a leather sofa in a vintage shop, and Ethan bought a series of landscape photographs taken in the mountains where he had grown up. "My dad used to take me hiking up there every summer," he explained. "After he died last year, I went back and took these photos. It felt like a way to keep him close." Elena took his hand. "I'm sorry I wasn't there for you when he passed. You didn't know. We weren't in touch." He pulled her close. "But you're here now, that's what matters." The holidays approached, and they navigated the complicated question of family. Elena's parents lived in Oregon, and she usually flew out to spend Thanksgiving with them. Ethan typically went to his mother's house in Wisconsin. "Come with me to Oregon," Elena said one evening. "My family would love to meet you. Well, to see you again. They remember you from before. Are you sure? That's a big step." "We're not kids anymore, Ethan. I know what I want. And I want you to meet my family properly as my boyfriend, not just some guy I was dating in graduate school." He kissed her soundly. "Then I would love to come to Oregon." Thanksgiving in Portland was both nerve-wracking and wonderful. Elena's father, a retired carpenter, grilled Ethan about his business and his intentions. Her mother, a high school English teacher, was more subtle but equally thorough in her questioning. Margaret flew in from Boston with her family, and Elena's nephews, aged 6 and 8, immediately latched onto Ethan, begging him to play soccer in the backyard. "They like you," Elena said, watching from the kitchen window as Ethan chased the boys around, letting them score goal after goal. "He's good with kids," Margaret observed. "That's a good sign. We're not there yet, but you're thinking about it." Elena turned to her sister. "Is it crazy that I'm already imagining a future with him? We've only been back together for 2 months. It's not crazy if it's real. And Elena, anyone can see this is real. He looks at you like you're the center of his universe." On their last night in Portland, Elena and Ethan went for a walk around her old neighborhood. The streets were quiet, decorated with early Christmas lights, and they walked hand in hand through the crisp November air. "Your family is wonderful," Ethan said. "Your dad only threatened me twice." "He likes you. If he didn't, he would have threatened you at least 5 times. Good to know." He stopped walking and turned to face her. "Elena, I know we said we'd take things slowly, but I need you to know something." Her heart started racing. "What? I love you. I never stopped loving you, even when we were apart. And I know it's fast, and I know we're still figuring things out, but I needed to say it. I love you." Tears pricked her eyes. "I love you too. I think I've loved you this whole time. I just tried to pretend I didn't." He kissed her then, deep and passionate, and Elena felt something settle in her chest. This was right. They were right. December flew by in a blur of work and holiday parties and stolen moments together. Elena's housing project in Queens was moving forward, and she was traveling to the site several times a week. Ethan was managing the launch of his New York office, working long hours to establish Drake Industries' presence on the East Coast. They both understood the demands of ambitious careers, and they made it work. They had breakfast together before heading to their separate offices. They texted throughout the day, silly messages and photos and reminders that they were thinking of each other. Most nights, they had dinner together, either cooking at home or trying new restaurants. "This is what we should have done before," Elena said one night as they cooked pasta in her kitchen. "We should have figured out how to make both our careers and our relationship work. We weren't ready before, we are now." "Do you really believe that?" He set down the wooden spoon and pulled her close. "I know it. You're my priority, Elena. The work is important, but you come first, always. Same here, I'm not losing you again." On Christmas Eve, Ethan's mother came to visit, and Elena was a nervous wreck. Caroline Drake was an elegant woman in her early 60s, with the same gray eyes as her son and a gentle but perceptive manner. "It's lovely to see you again, dear," she said, embracing Elena warmly. "Ethan has told me so much about your reunion." They had dinner at a cozy French restaurant, and Caroline regaled them with stories about Ethan as a child. "He was such a serious little boy," she said, her eyes twinkling. "Always trying to fix things, make them better. He once took apart the entire vacuum cleaner because he thought he could improve it." "Did he succeed?" Elena asked. "Not even close. His father had to call a repairman." Caroline reached across the table and squeezed Ethan's hand. "But he never gave up. That's my boy. Once he sets his mind to something, nothing stops him." Later, as they walked Caroline back to her hotel, she pulled Elena aside while Ethan was hailing a cab. "I need to tell you something," Caroline said softly. "When Ethan's father died, he shut down for months. He threw himself into work and refused to talk about his grief. But then he saw you at that wedding and he came back to life. You did that. You brought my son back to me." Elena felt tears welling up. "I love him very much." "I know you do, and he loves you. Don't let each other go this time." "We won't, I promise." On New Year's Eve, they went to a party at Marcus and Sophie's new apartment. Elena wore a silver dress and Ethan could not stop staring at her. "You're going to give me a complex," she teased as they rode the elevator up. "Good. You should know how beautiful you are." The party was crowded with friends and colleagues, and Elena enjoyed showing Ethan off, introducing him to her architecture firm colleagues, and watching him charm everyone he met. Sophie pulled her into the kitchen at one point, her eyes bright with champagne and excitement. "Look at you two," she said. "I knew it would work out. You're taking credit for this, absolutely. If I hadn't invited you both to my wedding, none of this would have happened." "Fair point." Elena hugged her friend. "Thank you for everything. You deserve to be happy, you both do." As midnight approached, everyone gathered in the living room. Ethan pulled Elena close, his arms wrapped around her waist from behind, and they counted down together. When the clock struck 12, he turned her around and kissed her as fireworks exploded outside the windows. "Happy New Year," he whispered against her lips. "Happy New Year. This is going to be our year, Elena. I can feel it." January brought new challenges. Elena's firm was under pressure to finish the Queen's housing project on an aggressive timeline, and she was working 14-hour days. Ethan's New York office was ramping up operations, and he was traveling frequently to Chicago and other cities for meetings. They started to argue, small disagreements about missed dinners and changed plans. Nothing serious, but enough to remind them that relationships required work and compromise. One night in late January, Elena came home to find Ethan cooking dinner, her apartment filled with the smell of garlic and tomatoes. "I thought you had a meeting tonight," she said, dropping her bag by the door. "I canceled it. We need to talk." Her stomach clenched. "That sounds ominous." "Sit down." He handed her a glass of wine. "I've been thinking about our schedules, about how little time we've had together lately. I know, it's been crazy, but the project will calm down in a few months, and then you'll have another project. And I'll have another acquisition or launch or crisis." He sat beside her on the couch. "I don't want us to fall into the trap of letting work consume us. We did that before, and it destroyed us." "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we make some rules. No work talk after 8 p.m. unless it's an emergency. At least one full day together each weekend, no exceptions. And we plan a vacation, just the two of us, somewhere we can disconnect completely." Elena felt relief wash through her. "You're not breaking up with me." "What? God, no." He pulled her into his arms. "Elena, I'm trying to make sure we don't break up. I'm trying to learn from our mistakes. I like your rules. Can I add one, please? We tell each other when we're feeling neglected or frustrated before it becomes a big problem. No more shutting down, deal? He kissed her. Now come eat. I made your favorite. They had dinner and talked for hours, not about work but about everything else. Books they wanted to read, places they wanted to visit, memories from their childhoods. It reminded Elena of why she had fallen for him in the first place. He saw her, really saw her, in a way no one else ever had. In March, they took their vacation, a week in Costa Rica. They stayed in a small eco-lodge in the rainforest with no television and spotty internet. They hiked through the jungle, swam in waterfalls, and spent lazy afternoons in a hammock reading and napping. On their last night, they sat on the balcony of their cabin, watching the sun set over the canopy. I don't want to go back, Elena said, her head on Ethan's shoulder. Me either. Maybe we should just stay here forever. Live off mangoes and rain water. You'd miss your spreadsheets and quarterly reports within a week. Probably. He kissed the top of her head. But I'd miss you more if we weren't together. That's sappy. I'm a sappy guy when it comes to you. She sat up and looked at him. Ethan, where do you see this going? Us, I mean. Where do you want it to go? I asked first. He took her hand. I see us getting married, having kids, growing old together. I see everything, Elena, but only if that's what you want too. Her heart felt full to bursting. That's what I want, all of it. Yeah, she laughed, feeling giddy and young. I want to marry you and have your babies and argue about whose turn it is to take out the trash. That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. They kissed as the sun disappeared below the horizon, and Elena felt a certainty she had never experienced before. This was her person. This was her future. When they returned to New York, real life crashed back in. Elena's project in Queens was finally complete, and the press attention was overwhelming. She did interviews and photo shoots, and her firm's partners talked about making her a senior partner. It was everything she had worked for, but it also meant longer hours and more responsibility. Ethan was dealing with his own success. Drake Industries had landed a major government contract to provide solar panels for federal buildings, and he was suddenly being featured in business magazines and invited to speak at conferences. They were both busier than ever, but they stuck to their rules. No work after 8 p.m. One full day together each weekend. Honest communication. In May, on the anniversary of their reunion at the wedding, Ethan took Elena back to the same hotel where it had all started. He had booked the same ballroom for a private dinner, and when Elena walked in, she gasped. The room was filled with candles and flowers, a single table set for two in the center. Ethan, this is incredible. I wanted to recreate the night we found each other again. He pulled out her chair. Except this time, I know exactly how I feel and what I want. They had dinner, reminiscing about the past year, the challenges they had overcome, the joy they had found in being together again. After dessert, Ethan stood and extended his hand. Dance with me. He had hired a pianist, and soft music filled the room as they swayed together. Elena rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. Elena Kimball, Ethan said softly. Yes. I love you more than I thought it was possible to love another person. You make me better. You make me happy. You make every single day worth living. He pulled back and looked into her eyes. And I want to spend the rest of my life making you as happy as you make me. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Elena's breath caught as he dropped to one knee. Will you marry me? Tears streamed down her face. Yes. Yes, of course, yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, a stunning emerald-cut diamond that caught the candlelight. Then he stood and kissed her, and Elena felt like she was floating. I can't believe you did all this, she said, looking around the ballroom. I wanted it to be special. I wanted you to know how much you mean to me. I know. I've always known." She kissed him again. "I can't wait to marry you." They called their families that night, and everyone was thrilled. Sophie screamed so loudly that Elena had to hold the phone away from her ear. "I'm planning everything," Sophie announced. "You owe me for getting you two back together. I thought you were just taking credit for that." "I was, but now it's official." Elena and Ethan laughed, curled up together on the couch in her apartment, making plans and dreaming about their future. The wedding planning was surprisingly fun. Elena and Ethan both wanted something intimate, just close friends and family. They chose a small vineyard in upstate New York for the ceremony, scheduling it for September. As the summer progressed, they looked for an apartment together. Elena's place was too small, and Ethan's loft did not feel like home. They found a brownstone in Park Slope with a small garden, 3 bedrooms, and enough space for both of them to have home offices. "This is perfect," Elena said, walking through the empty rooms and imagining their life there. "We could have your mother stay in this guest room." "And this could be," she stopped, suddenly shy. "Could be what?" Ethan asked. "Could be a nursery, eventually." He wrapped his arms around her from behind. "I like the way you think." They moved in together in July, and Elena loved every moment of creating a home with him. They argued about paint colors and where to hang their art. They assembled furniture together and planted vegetables in their small garden. It was domestic and ordinary and absolutely perfect. One evening in early August, Elena was working in her home office when Ethan appeared in the doorway. "I need to tell you something," he said, looking serious. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. But I got a call today. The company that owns Drake Industries wants to promote me. They want me to be the CEO of the entire corporation, not just the East Coast division." Elena's heart sank. "That's amazing. Congratulations." It would mean relocating to Chicago. The words hung in the air between them. Elena felt like all the oxygen had been sucked from the room. "I see." "Elena," I said no. She looked up sharply. "What?" I told them no. "I'm not moving to Chicago. I'm not leaving you or the life we're building here." He came into the room and knelt beside her chair. "I learned my lesson the first time. Career success means nothing if I don't have you. But this is a huge opportunity. So is marrying you. So is the life we're creating together. Those are the opportunities that matter." He took her hands. "I'm exactly where I want to be, doing work I care about with the woman I love. I don't need anything else." Elena felt tears welling up. "Are you sure? I don't want you to resent me later." "I could never resent you. You're my dream, Elena. The job is just a job." She pulled him close, holding him tight. "I love you so much. I love you too, and I'm not going anywhere, not this time. Not ever." September arrived in a blur of final preparations. The day before the wedding, their families gathered at the vineyard, and Elena barely slept from excitement. The wedding day was perfect. The weather was warm but not hot, with a gentle breeze rustling through the grapevines. Elena wore a simple ivory gown, and when she walked down the aisle on her father's arm, she saw only Ethan. He stood at the altar in a navy suit, his eyes glistening with emotion as he watched her approach. When she reached him, he took her hands and whispered, "You're so beautiful." The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. They had written their own vows, and Elena barely made it through hers without crying. "Ethan, you are my home," she said. "You're my best friend, my partner, my love. 5 years ago, I thought I had lost you forever. But fate brought us back together, and I promise to never take that gift for granted. I will choose you every single day for the rest of my life." Ethan's vows were equally emotional. "Elena, from the moment I saw you again at Marcus and Sophie's wedding, I knew my heart had never let you go. You are my everything." My inspiration, my joy, my reason for being better. I promise to support your dreams, to make you laugh, to hold you when things are hard, and to love you with everything I have. Today, tomorrow, and always." When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Ethan kissed her with such tenderness that everyone applauded. As they walked back down the aisle together, Elena felt pure happiness radiating through every cell of her body. The reception was filled with laughter and dancing. Marcus gave a hilarious best man speech about how he had secretly tried to set them up at the wedding. Sophie cried through her maid of honor toast, talking about how she had always known they belonged together. Elena and Ethan had their first dance to the same song that had been playing at the original wedding, and as they moved together, Elena whispered, "Thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up on us, for fighting for this. Thank you for letting me, for taking a chance on us again. Best decision I ever made." As the night wore on, they snuck away to a quiet corner of the vineyard, watching their friends and family celebrate. "Mrs. Drake," Ethan said, testing out her new name. "I'm keeping Kimball professionally, but I like the sound of that. I like the sound of my wife even more." They kissed under the stars, and Elena felt a contentment she had never experienced before. This was love. Real, lasting, forever love. 6 months later, Elena found out she was pregnant. She told Ethan on Valentine's Day, wrapping the positive pregnancy test in a small box with a card that read, "Our greatest adventure starts in September." He cried, actually cried, tears of joy streaming down his face as he picked her up and spun her around. "We're having a baby." "We're having a baby," she confirmed, laughing and crying at the same time. The pregnancy was smooth, and both their families were over the moon with excitement. Ethan became impossibly protective, insisting Elena slow down at work and rest more. She teased him mercilessly about his hovering, but secretly loved how much he cared. Their daughter, Charlotte, was born in early September, a week before their first wedding anniversary. She had Elena's green eyes and Ethan's dark hair, and she was absolutely perfect. Ethan held her in the hospital, looking down at their daughter with wonder. "She's so tiny." "She's perfect," Elena said, exhausted but happy. "She is, just like her mother." He looked up at Elena. "Thank you, for this, for her, for everything. Thank you for finding me again." "I'll always find you, in this life and any other." As Elena watched her husband cradle their daughter, she thought about the twisting path that had brought them here. The love, the loss, the reunion. All of it had been necessary to get them to this moment. Sometimes love required a second chance. Sometimes people needed to grow separately before they could grow together. And sometimes fate intervened at a friend's wedding to remind two hearts that they had always belonged together. Elena reached for Ethan's hand, and he squeezed back, the three of them a perfect unit. Their family. Their forever. 2 years later, they welcomed a son, Thomas, and their brownstone filled with the chaos of toys and laughter. Elena scaled back her hours at the firm, becoming a consultant so she could have more flexibility. Ethan did the same, bringing in a co-CEO to help manage Drake Industries, while he focused on the projects he was most passionate about. They learned to balance it all, the careers they loved, the children they adored, and the relationship that was the foundation of everything. It was not always easy. There were sleepless nights and disagreements about discipline and moments when they were both stretched too thin, but they had learned from their past. They communicated, they compromised, and they never stopped choosing each other. On their 5th wedding anniversary, they returned to the vineyard where they had gotten married. Ethan's mother came to stay with the kids, and they spent 2 blissful nights, just the two of them. "Do you ever think about how different our lives would be if Sophie hadn't invited us both to her wedding?" Elena asked as they walked through the grapevines at sunset. "All the time. I think about how close we came to missing this, to missing each other. He pulled her close. I'm grateful every single day that we got a second chance. Me too, she kissed him softly. I love you, Ethan Drake, more now than even on our wedding day. I love you too, Elena, you and our chaos and our beautiful messy life. They stood there as the sun set, two people who had found their way back to each other against all odds. Their love story had not been simple or straightforward, but it had been real. And it had been worth every moment of pain and uncertainty to arrive at this perfect, ordinary, extraordinary life they had built together. Years later, when Charlotte and Thomas asked about how their parents fell in love, Elena and Ethan would tell them the whole story. The first meeting in graduate school, the painful breakup, the unexpected reunion at a friend's wedding. They would talk about second chances and the importance of fighting for what matters. But most importantly, they would tell their children that real love is not just about the butterflies and grand gestures. It is about showing up every day, even when it is hard. It is about choosing each other again and again. It is about building a life together, brick by brick, moment by moment. And sometimes, if you are very lucky, it is about finding your way back to the person who was always meant to be yours. The end.